Welcome to Fitness and Consciousness. I'm your host, Ryan Hadley. Today's show is about energetic imprints, dreams, and we'll see what else we can get into. I'm also going to talk about sacrifice and read a couple poems, talk about a few things. Normally when I'm doing the show, I have a cup of coffee. This was my dad's mug, and he died in 2005. If you knew me in high school and you came over to our place, you probably saw this mug on the table, on our counter. It was just always out. And the table that I'm doing the podcast from, my kitchen table, it was my grandma's, my dad's mom's. She died when my mom was pregnant with me. And this table is, I think it's over 100 years old, 100 and some years old. And so does it have their energy in it? Is there their energetic imprint in it? Or is it just in my imagination? Or what's an imagination? What's that made out of? These memories or thoughts that we have. I started the show, actually. I restarted my recording. I kind of got thrown off. I was talking about energetic imprints, and my friend that I was talking about sent me a message, and it threw me off. And so I just kind of I just had to restart. But what happened was just a few days ago, on Thursday, today is Sunday, I was getting carry out for this friend of mine and me. I was going to her place to watch a movie, and this is a friend of mine that has been more than a friend. I've mentioned her before on the show, not by name, but I was going into the restaurant, this Thai place, and I looked over and I saw the energetic imprint. I saw me and my ex-girlfriend sitting there at the booth where we had our first date. Or when we first met, we met at this coffee shop, and then we started walking around, and we walked by this Thai place, and she said she was hungry and asked if I wanted to go in. And so we did, and we sat at this booth, and didn't really ever think of it as like our place, or but it was the place where we had our first date. And I'm not sure how many times we ended up going there, but when I looked over, I could see us there, and it was more than just remembering. And so it made me think of, like, why did that relationship happen? If it was just going to end anyways, why bother? And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think we made each other better in different ways. She agrees, and I guess it just wasn't meant to last. Some people just come into our lives for a season, as some say, and so come in to help make these changes, and then we level up. And some people, they move on, and some people stay together, but for the most part, we end up moving on, don't we? The vast majority of relationships don't work. It was this pretty powerful experience, and and then I was on my way to my friend's house, and perhaps she'll be more than a friend again, and who knows what'll happen. But she happened to send me a message. We hadn't talked for a while, and she just sent me a message asking how I was doing. And this was yesterday, which was Saturday, so 2 days after this happened. And I told her I was going to, mention this on the show, and I wouldn't mention her name. She said she didn't care if I did, but anyways, why did that happen? And when I was recording this show just a little bit ago, and I was telling the story of when I was driving a cab and I was between calls, and I was sitting at this place on 38th and College in Indianapolis. I was sitting at the Walgreens and I was looking across the street in the rain, and there's this place, this building that's all ran down now. It's, boarded up and falling apart. It used to have this place called Moon and Stars, and they sold African drums and like low end guitars and pipes and bongs and music CDs from around the world, and a lot of just objects, little artsy things from around the world. And my friends and I would go there. My friends and I from Shelbyville would go there in high school, and then when I moved to Greenfield, I would go there with my friends from Greenfield, and that was in my junior year. So we'd go there and we'd hang out and buy stuff, and it was this really cool place. And so I was sitting in my cab looking through the rain, and I could see us there. I could see 20 years ago what it looked like if you were looking through the window and saw me and my friends in there. And this is like beyond memory. It's way more than just remembering. Oh yeah, we used to go there. You could really see it. And I wonder what that really is, these energetic imprints, and being able to perceive them. And I was so thinking of what I was going to talk about for this episode. I was really considering, the effects we have on people, the effects people have on us, the places that we go. Part of us stays there. How many people had their first dates at that Thai restaurant, and how many people end up going there with someone else later, having a different first date there, or having some other experience there. One of the friends that I used to go to that store with, his name was Jeremiah, and I would go there with his I was friends with his brother and sister also, and I would go with another friend of mine. And when I was telling the story, that other friend of mine sent me a message, and it threw me off, and I started just kind of rambling off. Hard to believe. But when we were in high school, so Jeremiah and I have the same birthday, same day, same year. And we were in this literature class together, and we were supposed to write a poem, and he wrote the song Mama Tried. The Grateful Dead did it, and he didn't know that it was actually Merle Haggard that wrote the song. And he did not think that our teacher would know about the Grateful Dead or not listen to them anyway. So he wrote the song Mama Tried, and he ended up getting like an A+ on it. And so what's the point of that? Yeah, just a funny story. But when I was in 7th grade, we were supposed to write this poem, and I was already writing. I was already a deep thinker, I guess. you could say, relatively speaking, anyway. And I wrote the poem Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair. If Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair, he wasn't fuzzy, was he? And of course, other kids were saying, you didn't write that. We know that one. And the teacher was like, oh, actually, I think you did write it. Yeah, I never heard that before. So obviously she did. But in my mind, it's like, these kids are not ready for what I really have in my mind. So I'm not even going to let it out. And I was already writing all kinds of other stuff. And so what would have happened if I did break them off some of my real thoughts? uh, so with the energetic imprints, I was thinking, I don't know if I just repeated this. I mentioned it, like I said, I was recording just a little bit ago, but the table that I do the podcast from uh, was my dad's mom. She died when my mom was pregnant with me, actually. And I have her table, and I drink out of the mug that was my dad's. He died in 2005. So I wonder, is there something in these objects besides my memories? And even, and what is the memory? I'm drinking the coffee, and I usually drink coffee during the show. And when I would watch some TV shows like the Rifleman, which my dad used to watch, it's a good show. It's from the 60s and 50s or 60s, maybe even the 50s, 50s, 60s, whatever. But when he would take a drink of coffee, I was often drinking a cup of coffee watching the show, and I thought it's kind of cool to have a cup of coffee with the Rifleman. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about some dreams. And I had this dream from maybe 5 months ago. This Native American woman was in a fenced area with a bear. And the bear was no threat to her. It was like she was the powerful one. She had long black hair. She looked to be about 30 years old or so, but not sure if that really matters. But this bear was kind of like in service to her, or something like that. She wasn't worried about the bear. The bear was no threat. And young men would have a chance to come up, and if they could say something clever, then the bear would not attack them. And clever in this instance, clever was the word that I knew in my dream, but clever meaning something like wisdom expressed quickly. So the young men would run up, and they would either forget what they were going to say, or they just had nothing to say, and they would just kind of like fall down and kind of like nervously laugh, and they were just goofy and weak. And the woman, she was just kind of like pacing around, just kind of like walking purposefully. And I could remember her like throwing her hair back, and it was just kind of like in slow motion, this long black hair flying back, and she was just like waiting for someone that had something to say, someone that wasn't weak. And I could feel in my dream the bear bite my hand. I could feel the teeth start to penetrate my skin, and I turned my hand to keep it from biting all the way through. So I wonder, well, what does that dream mean? And I think it was Carl Jung that said, we are all the characters in our dream. These are different aspects of ourself. And I'm not sure if that's really true or not. Maybe it is sometimes. But if you had that dream, what would that mean for you? Uh, so what would the woman represent? She's just waiting for someone that had something wise to say, and to be able to do it quickly, like, go, come on, what do you have? And if you don't have it, then the bear is going to get you. And part of this show is, if you're, you tune in, you see the fitness, and then you see the consciousness in the title. And I've had a lot of people that are world famous strength trainers, doctors, and psychologists, and physical therapists, and but I never wanted the show to be just about fitness stuff. I'm, have in the fitness world myself, but I don't want to just talk about that. That's just kind of a place to start. Some of the guests will just focus on that, and then some of them will dig a little deeper. We'll dig into mystical subjects or spirituality. And if you were having that dream, or if you were in that dream, what would you say? So you have your chance. What do you say? And I don't remember going up to the woman, but I did feel like when you're having the dream, and you can like actually feel something. I could feel the bite on my hand. So, and I've been thinking since I've started the show and studying some people like Jordan Peterson, and like saying, like, one of the most important things we can do is learn how to say what we think. And thinking isn't just the stuff that pops in our head. It's looking at what were those thoughts and make them better and better, more and more true. How do we get there? And I think a lot of people, what's really common that I see is people having the same answer for everything. So they don't really have to think very deeply. It's just like, oh, he's a racist, or oh, he's this or that. You see this in the political commentaries of people outraged for all sorts of reasons, and they don't think very deeply. They don't listen very much. They just protest someone speaking at their college instead of just like listening and giving their own well thought out views. It's just like, no, you can't speak here. And you wonder if they've ever really heard them speak. If they're saying, no, you cannot speak here, have you ever listened to them speak? How do you know what they're going to say? And what's the problem with them saying it anyways? And you can listen to people that disagree, or that say something that you have a hard time hearing, and maybe it'll help you process your own thoughts better. Like, yes, I am against this, and this is why. And critique your own views at least as much as someone else's. And that's the tough part, isn't it? Admitting that, what we think right now is not as well thought out as what we're going to think later, a year from now. But when we keep having these same responses to everything, no, it's the patriarchy, or it's the this or that, then who is that really hurting? So, one of my influences, which I really enjoyed, was the character Chris Stevens on the show Northern Exposure. And he had the show Chris in the Morning, and he has this radio show where he would come on and give his thoughts, and he'd read some poems, and he would read some philosophy, and he would give his own thoughts and philosophies. And I always thought that was really interesting. He was one of my favorite characters on the show. If you've never seen it, it's really worth watching. So I will take this moment to read one or a couple. I got a couple short ones here. This is by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It applies to what we were just talking about. And speaking of texts, and I mentioned earlier I stopped the show and restarted it because of this text from one of the friends I was talking about, sending me a message at that moment. I just got a message from someone else I was talking about. What a coincidence. Holidays by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. The holiest of all holidays are those kept by ourselves in silence and apart, the secret anniversaries of the heart, when the full river of feeling overflows, the happy days unclouded to their close, the sudden joys that out of darkness start, as flames from ashes, swift desires that dart, like swallows singing down each wind that blows, white as the gleam of a receding sail, white as a cloud that floats and fades in air, white as the whitest lily on the stream, those tender memories are a fairy tale of some enchanted land we know not where, but lovely as a landscape in a dream. Nature, as a fond mother, when the day is over, leads us by the hand, her little child to bed, half willing, half reluctant to be led, and leave his broken playthings on the floor, still gazing at them through the open door, nor wholly reassured and comforted by promises of others in their stead, which, through more splendid, may not please him more. So nature deals with us and takes away our playthings one by one, and by the hand leads us to rest so gently that we go, scarce knowing if we wish to go or stay, being too full of sleep to understand how far the unknown transcends the what we know. Another one here. Memories. Oft I remember those whom I have known, in other days to whom my heart was led, as by a magnet, and who are not dead, but absent, as their memories overgrown, with other thoughts and troubles of my own, as graves with grasses are, and at their head, the stone with moss and lichens so overspread, Nothing is legible but the name alone. And is it so with them after long years? Do they remember me in the same way? And is the memory pleasant as to me? I fear to ask, yet wherefore are my fears? Pleasures, like flowers, may wither and decay, and yet the root perennial may be. So within a matter of minutes into this show, and the one that I started and ended up stopping, I got a message from the people I was talking about. I'm going to change. I'm going to change directions again here. I'm going to talk about sacrifice. Maybe that's kind of related. Yesterday, I went to a jiu-jitsu class, a 10th Planet jiu-jitsu class here in Indianapolis. And I've went there once before, and I started my first jiu-jitsu class. It was 20 years ago. But I went to this class yesterday, and we were practicing techniques, just technique for the first hour, and then the second hour, some more technique from a different instructor, and then doing some rolling. And during one of the rolls, I was the guy on I was on top, the guy on bottom was trying to reverse me, and I kind of like jumped around or something to keep side control, and I landed on my toe, and I heard like pop, pop, pop. Like, oh, great. But it kept going, and I knew it wasn't like good. I knew something happened, but it didn't seem like it was all that horrible. And so we kept going, and then I finished out the hour, and then I iced it when I got home, and when I woke up today, it was a lot more swollen, had like some bruising. Not that big of a deal, but it's frustrating. I'm training for the second level of my Strong First certification, and I need to make sure that I'm going into that 100%. I should be fine with it. It's in April. It's plenty of time. This toe's not going to hold me back or give me any. It's not going to hold me back. But I was thinking about, using martial arts as the, like literally and metaphorically, the sacrifices that we have. Like there was, if you're saying yes to one thing, you might be saying no to something else. And so if you were to say, okay, yes, you can train for these 2 hours and you're going to break your toe, do you still want to do it? Like, probably not. No, I don't want to be having a busted toe just to train for a couple hours. I don't know that I really gained all that much in those 2 hours to make it worth it. It's not a bad injury or anything, but it's frustrating. I have to walk on it. I have to stand on it. I have, like, there's 3 different places where I work. I have like what I call my job. I work from usually 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. and I work on a machine. I'm standing up the whole time. And then in the afternoons and evenings, I have clients and classes, and I'm on my feet the whole time then. So, but I still want to train. And when you're training martial arts, you can't help but get injured at some point if you're training like for the real thing. So there are other sacrifices that we make, choosing something and saying no to something else. So if you're loyal, like in a relationship, and you're knowing that there's going to be some kind of problem, is going to happen. Most of the relationships aren't going to be perfect, but they teach us something. And people just aren't designed to be alone. Not very good at it. So if you knew from the beginning that, yeah, this is not going to work out, it might last a week, a month, a year, 10 years, 30 years, and then it's going to end. Do you still want to do it? These bad things are going to happen. Do you still want to do it? And if it's, we have to make these choices. It's like, well, why would I risk injuries at a jiu-jitsu class when I'm training for something where it could very well keep me from passing my certification? And for me, I also teach people martial art. I don't present myself as, some great master. I've been doing it for a long time. I have some good stuff to share. So I feel like it's my responsibility to go to places where I'm going to be challenged. I'm going to be out of my comfort zone. So like 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu it's different than like a lot of other jiu-jitsus. I mean, there's a lot of the same stuff, but they have different techniques. They have different setups, and it's designed all for not wearing a gi. And there's some of the technique requires more flexibility, and the system is criticized by some, and others think it's the best ever. So when I decided to go to that one, and they offer a bunch of different classes at this place, but when I got promoted at my last jiu-jitsu school, you start to wear a hakama, which is like the uniform like you would see in Aikido. Whether or not you're following along with this exactly doesn't really matter so much if you know about the martial arts or not. But I started to have kind of I started to kind of resent the uniform in a way. So I got this promotion that means I'm really starting to understand this stuff. It doesn't mean I'm, the best, or it just means this promotion, it's one level under black belt in the Japanese system. And saying that just reminded me I had a dream about that last night. Anyways, so it was I got promoted to one belt below black belt in the Japanese system, and you start to wear the hakama. And it's kind of a pain. You have to fold it just right. And they would have the teacher would have us fold our other uniform, right, the regular gi. You had to fold it a particular way. But it, no big deal. But the hakama is even more of a pain. And I started to resent it. And I started to resent, quite frankly, I started to resent the class. And maybe I started to resent the teacher also. He taught me the vast majority of what I know about martial arts. And I have a great appreciation for that. And I also started to resent it. And, I don't like to say that I resent him. He's probably about 70 years old. He's been teaching in Indianapolis since 1969. but his resentment or my resentment towards him is not his fault. It's in my own mind. But I mostly have a deep respect. But it was like in that school, we started doing a lot less sparring. And at this jiu-jitsu school is we did punching, kicking, uh, throws, all the throws you'd see in judo, and we did all of that at the jiu-jitsu school. And so what that means is when you spread your focus out, then you're not as good at one particular thing. So let's say you have a random student that had been training at this jiu-jitsu school that I'm talking about for a year, and they go up against a Brazilian jiu-jitsu student that had been training for a year, and all other things equal, or whatever, athleticism and size, and who's going to win? And I would say that the one that was training Brazilian jiu-jitsu would beat the guy that had been training the Japanese jiu-jitsu in a grappling match. Now you add punching, kicking, and some other things that, well, let's start there. If you had punching and kicking, then I don't know. There was a cop that was in our class. There was a bunch of cops in the class. Like one of them said that he likes what we did better at that place than at the Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools because it applies more to what he's doing as a cop, arresting people. And like he said, something like, we're not going to play guard wearing a gun belt. It's you just do different stuff. There's also like the Zen meditation that we learned, and sometimes I thought, I was almost like tricked into going to this school. Like what I thought that I wanted to go and learn jiu-jitsu, but what I really needed to understand was the Zen. And so part of what I was resenting was the not sparring very much and practicing things that I thought were getting less and less applicable. But now as I think about it, and I've busted my toes and fingers at that class a bunch of times, and a whole list of relatively minor injuries. But when I did whatever I did to my toe yesterday, I started thinking, what am I doing? And what is my plan going forward? I'll be 40 years old in April, and so I know that I don't want to be like a competitive boxer. I don't want to get punched in the head a bunch of times and get concussions. And so I know I don't want to do that. I don't want to do any more real hard sparring in kickboxing. I've done that. It has its place, but I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to just take a beating from people that are really good at giving beatings. But I do like the grappling, and I do like the light contact, kickboxing. But going forward, what do we do? And when I'm teaching people, how do I make sure I'm not a fraud? And I don't present, like I said, I don't present myself as something that I'm not. When a buddy of mine started training with me, he actually is a karate teacher, and he was asking, so at first he's training with me, and I'm a lot better on the ground than him, especially at the time. He's made tremendous gains that way, but he asked me, like what he should do to get better. And the thing that I said was, go learn from someone else. Go train with people that are bigger than me. I weigh like 165. He weighs a little bit more. go train with people that are better than me, go train with people that are bigger, stronger, better technique, and that just do different stuff than me. So yeah, sure, come, I'll teach you everything I know. I have a lot of cool stuff to share. But going forward, and I look at what's the imprint that I want to leave on people. What's the imprint that I want to leave on places? What kind of imprint are these places that I teach going to leave on someone else? So when people just like, what do we give people to keep when we're already when we leave? So whether it's the ex-girlfriend that we leave on very good terms, and I start to talk about her on the show, and I get a message at that moment, or the friend that I start to talk about, and I get a message at that moment. So we can leave these people with good impressions, and how do we do that? So just being authentic and not being afraid to be authentic. It's like push ourselves and things that we're like a little bit embarrassed about, like singing or showing our true selves. Now, speaking of singing, I'm not going to sing, but I'm going to read this song from the Grateful Dead called Broke Down Palace. Fare you well, my honey. Fare you well, my only true one. All the birds that were singing are flown, except you alone. Going to leave this broke down palace. On my hands and my knees, I will roll, roll, roll. Make myself a bed on the water side. In my time, I will roll, roll, roll. In a bed, by the water side, I will lay my head. Listen to the river, sing sweet songs to rock my soul. River gonna take me, sing me sweet and sleepy, sing me sweet and sleepy all the way back home. It's a far gone lullaby sung many years ago. Mama, mama, many worlds I've come since I first left home. Going home, going home. By the waterside I will rest my bones. Listen to the river sing sweet songs to rock my soul. Going to plant a weeping willow on the bank's green edge. It will grow, grow, grow. Sing a lullaby beside the water. Lovers come and go. The river roll, roll, roll. Fare you well, fare you well. I love you more than words can tell. Listen to the river swing sweet songs to rock my soul. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to wrap up this episode now. And I know sometimes I get to rambling, and like I said before, I don't plan my words out exactly. I just have these different subjects that I want to talk about, stories to tell, poems to read, and I hope that people can, follow these trains of thought. And perhaps where I start to ramble off, then maybe that's where someone else can, picks up on their own train of thought. So there we go. Thank you for tuning in. I believe next week I'll have a pretty interesting guest planned. I'll continue to do shows by myself. am trying to work on the not rambling so much and to be more concise, but sometimes in these ramblings that, these like maybe some like gems can come out, when musicians go to the recording studio. It's like the good engineers will record the whole thing. So it's not just they're recording like when they're just, doodling around, and because maybe something brilliant comes out when they're just messing around in between songs or whatever. And it's like, whoa, what was that? If you don't have it on record, then like, oh, what was what? Oh, I think I was doing something like this. No, it was something else. But if you don't record it, you might forget. So thank you again for tuning in. If you have any feedback you want to give me, you can send me an email, fitnessandconsciousness@gmail.com. If you want to be a guest on the show, send me a message. If you have show ideas, if you want to hear me speak about particular subjects, send me a message, and I'll see what happens. I've had so many great guests, and I'll continue to have them, and I'm really grateful for the guests that I've had. A lot of my heroes in the strength world, and some people that I've discover on Instagram. One day I send them a message like, oh, I really like what you're doing. Do you want to come on the show? And then a few days later they're on the show, and I have someone new to study. I have someone new to uh, share, someone new to connect with other people. So thank you again for tuning in. We will see you next time.